perspective in order to create sustainable value, not just look at the host organisation. And maybe we'll do this next week because we'll try and spend some time on the systems thinking and look at supply chain management and the emergence of sustainable supply chain management in terms of creating an efficient and effective running business, and seek to find opportunities to be more sustainable within our supply chain, and look in terms of our objective 3 in terms of the different improvement strategies, decisions that supply chain managers, organizations can make to have an influence on the natural environment around them, planet, social environment, people, and how that contributes to economic success in terms of profit, or if you are a third sector, not-for-profit organisation, then in terms of surplus. So please use the chat. Is that okay? These are our objectives today. I think today we'll spend an hour or so doing objective 1, and then we will leave objective 2 free for next week. It's not like we're not short of time. And then at the end of this call, it'd be nice to turn off the recording and talk about your assignments, the different assignments that you're doing, and have a chat about that. Okay? How about that then, guys? Is that okay? So say on the chat if you're still with me, you can still hear me, everything is good. So we're going to look at a systems perspective. No one's chatting, or is it because I haven't? Yep, no one's chatting. So I believe this will work. And let's take fair trade products as an opening example. When we buy our fair trade products, it has a particular label, and this label actually has a meaning in terms of what you're buying. So what is the fair trade story? So hopefully I can show this video and it will also display for you.
New stories are written every day.
Stories for each of us creates a better future for us and our families. Stories with and wish. And each story becomes part of a global movement spread by all of us choosing to do the right thing. Our choice to make tomorrow's stories better than today's. The story grows. Building communities, better education, safer places, real impact from our decisions. Bigger stories, better choices.
This started as my small story, but now it's a big story. People connecting for a better world. Make fashion is story too.
Fair trade, what does it mean? So let's try and use the chat if we can. What does it mean to you? Let's give you a couple of minutes to think about that. What does fair trade mean to you? Why might we buy or not buy fair trade? So please, I'm going to so if you do not wish to speak, then mute your controls. Oh. dog wants. Can you add some chat? Good. Hold on, Maurice. So Maurice, so Sarah's having connection issues. So connection issues, okay, Sarah? Fair trade, pay more for a fair value chain, especially when it comes to the supplier side. Yeah, so it's exchange of more money for trust. Yeah, it's actually, Michael Porter would argue it's around redistributing funds equitably down the supply chain. Does it still lead to good supply chains, more ethical supply chains? I think the answer is of course, but there's obviously more that could be done. I did post onto Moodle a couple of weeks ago a very interesting example from dispatches of Starbucks and Nespresso, and some undercover cameras going into Guatemala farms, and they weren't fair trade farms, of course, and they found and exposed child labour. So Starbucks, quite interestingly, is the largest buyer of fair trade products around the world because they are huge, of course. Massive. Not all of their products are fair trade. So when you buy fair trade, this means cooperatives have come together, and farms and players along the supply chains have been audited in terms of their practices, and they are audited against a set of standards by the Fair Trade Organisation, and then they've been given their rubber stamp. So Sarah adds to Maurice's comment, if you buy fair trade, this enables customers to be more conscious, to lead to more conscious consumption, and to some more support small-scale farmers and workers. Yes, because they come together as cooperatives and then they redistribute the funds. We will come back to this point a little bit later, but I just wanted to highlight a video just to get us thinking. Okay. We talked about, or Hot Tan talked about the book by John McKay in terms of conscious capitalism, and we have talked about this quite a lot. I want to just pull out one he makes in the conscious capitalism book, and I'm really hoping he has read this book or is undertaking the reading of this book. And what he talks about is the three key parts of our society, not only, but it simplifies it and distinguishing between our for-profit sector, our private sector, our not-for-profit sector, and our governments think about this three-legged stool in terms of the COVID-19 response, which maybe we want to talk about a little bit later. But the language, of course, is American, so for profits, private sector, not for profits, what we would call our third and public sector, and the role of the government. So look at the TED Talks that we've been watching, such as John McKay, Ray Anderson, and most certainly Michael Porter. The language which is used, you can hear a lot in the for-profit sector, the private sector, is around the word value and the word scale. Now, we've debated and discussed this word value, and we keep coming back to it because this module is about purpose-driven organisation. So value sits at the heart of our conversations. But what does value mean? And what does scale, what does value mean in the for-profit sector? Would anyone like to chip in through the chat or through the talk? What does value mean in the for-profit sector? What does value mean for you? Okay, no chat. And often you hear the word in for-profit sector, the word scale. Let's generate value, but this word is mainly seen as an economic word, the value that we create. Another way of putting it, the dog's coming back. In terms of value, in terms of economic value, profit, the normal way of doing business in terms of making money, making profit, being sustainable. Okay, Maurice, take your time. Take your time. We've got all the time in the world. Benji has arrived back. Maybe my wife is on a conference call in the office, and she must think that the dog is my responsibility and not hers. I did say that I'm recording this lecture. Different values, we can say. So, and also we talk about the word scale. So scale, let's make our business bigger and greater. Let's scale our operations. Now, when we talk about the not-for-profit sector, and I did some research onto this and asked some questions in discussion groups into the word value. I wish I did a little bit more work on it. But what started to emerge was in the not-for-profit sector, talking about values. Values. And I often think, and this is a question I always come back to, that we often confuse the word value and values. And at a number of conferences I've attended in the last couple of years, I thought about this or raised this point, and this has been probably one of the main discussion points. Do we actually understand what we mean by value? Do we understand what we mean by values? So I'm going to try in a moment to decouple that discussion and put some thought into it, put some more work. I certainly need to put more. Interesting to hear what you have to say. And of course, what is the role of government? So we're talking about this higher purpose in conscious capitalism, the terminology that binds all the theories and concepts that we've been looking at, purpose beyond profit, doing well by doing good. It's around a higher purpose, more than just money. Reconnecting with a higher purpose. The purpose of business, of course, and is the traditional way of doing business, it is to make money in the for-profit sector. We're talking about a higher purpose, conscious capitalism. Capitalism with the conscious word before it. So, in our chat, value seen as the economic view, monetary value of something. And values, this is very good, Maurice, it's fantastic. And values, the underlying beliefs and norms that drive a private sector organisation. Okay, that's great. Now just think about that, Maurice, because that's fantastic what you just put there. And think about your experience in business. I often think these two words are confused between the value and values. And you've gone right to the heart of that discussion. So thank you very, very much. You can see that. Now remember that each of these sectors are all based on voluntary exchange. We choose to go to a supermarket. Well, we might not choose at the moment a particular supermarket, actually it's the local one at this particular moment, and we choose which charities to support or which voluntary sectors what voluntary organisation that we might use. So you might be surprised that I play bowls, which is the most important activity in my life on a Saturday, followed by golf. And these are voluntary organisations that I participate in. And of course, you'll have government. Before we go into government, and this is a key word that we're seeing on the news at the moment. Both sectors, you can see selfishness and greed. And how does this selfishness and greed come about? Well, I think I'm just going to pose that question today because I want you to pick up the news as we self-isolate for a few weeks and try and save the world by sitting on our sofas. It's true. And think about what's happened over the weekend and the reason why the government's gone into lockdown, or the governments across Europe have gone into lockdown. And think about that word selfishness and greed. Think about the financial crisis that we had over 10 years ago, the bankers' bonuses and that type of debate. Selfishness and greed still occur across the sectors and, of course, in our government. So what I found interesting from the Conscious Capitalism discussions, TED Talks book, is that there is a desire to tear down the conceptual walls of an organisation. And remember, our values are individual as well as organisational, as well as a society. There's people here who are from Germany and from India or Bangladesh, and there are values, of course, at our national level too. But these values transcend business. So today I'm giving this lecture as part of my university role. Later on today, I'll go and do my shopping, I'll do my neighbour's shopping. My values don't really change, but they are different boundaries. So I will be, in my work, through my other activities, I will be transcending a number of organisational boundaries. Can we tear down these conceptual walls? And if we do, at the heart of that will be values. For-profits and non-profits should act like colleagues. So why over the last few decades have all of our theories been about competition, positioning, vis-a-vis our competitors? Which, of course, we need to understand, and we need to identify these patterns and pursue them and penetrate new markets and things like that. But can we actually compete through collaboration, through allies working together? And maybe during this period of the next few weeks, we're seeing people pull together. There's no competition between one street and another street on who's going to get their toilet roll. That happened a couple of weeks ago. That was competitive behaviour, but now we need to pull together. So there's so much in common between the different sectors, and he tries to differentiate what each sector should be like, and he provides a roadmap for that, and there's something we can learn from that. So can I highly recommend that we read up on this. And non-profits can do what profits cannot do. Profits can bring resources, capital and skills. But at the heart of this is the higher purpose and to be more conscious. Now, can I just give you 10 minutes now to get yourself a cup of tea and to think about the word values and to think about the word value and how we can break down these silos and use our values and put them into action. Can I give you a 10-minute break to look at that? Recharge your cup of tea, get a cup of coffee, and we'll come back. I want you to really just put some thought into the word values and value and what that means. See, thank you. Look at those. So we have Maurice. We had Maurice first. Here's Maurice Teddy Bear. Right. My thoughts on values. I'm going to read what Maurice said. The term value seems to be solely connected with the monetary value. However, value is always shaped by the values we have. How much monetary value do we allocate to certain products and services? It's also shaped by heritage, our cultural upbringing, what means how much to us. If we think about what value things have to us, we oftentimes come to the conclusion that it's the old teddy bear we had as a child. Yeah, I had a teddy bear. Can you remember the name of your teddy bear? That was only worth, Super Ted, that's the program, was only worth a few pounds, but might never sell because of the value we subjectively allocate to that. I've still got mine. Probably. Values always will shape how we see value. Lovely. Lovely. Oh, I think this is it now. Values, I've lost. Values always will shape how we see value. So we need to understand which values we want to embed in what we do. And organisations create a discussion around values and set these values, and it sets the culture. That's a 10 out of 10 answer. That's absolutely fantastic. I think I've learned a lot from your answer, and that sets up the rest of our discussions. Sarah, from my experience, so Sarah's worked in a charity. The difference between value and values become more visible within the cooperative partnerships department. So that's obviously a large charity then. On the one hand, the organisation supporting our cause will strongly focus on their personal benefit, the monetary value of a potential cooperation, e.g. supporting the charity would benefit the brand reputation, while the charity itself was more focused on whether a cooperation would be an organisational value. So it was questions. So these were like a North Star, some guiding principles that helped with decision making then. And the name of the charity was Cushman Barken. So if you want to correct me in the way that I pronounced your wonderful language, then please do. You can't knock me over the head, but you can maybe give me a virtual if he was on camera. Okay. Sarah's doing a dissertation in Sarah, quite relevant. So hopefully you can see my screen. But what we didn't talk about was governments. So they can play the umpire and do what non-profits and for-profits cannot do, the gap in the middle. Well, this is challenged at the moment because the government has to step in and do quite a bit. But they normally play the umpire. How can they bring this about? So the Scottish government are very interested in Scotland Can Be, Edinburgh can be, and how that can bring people together towards this meaningful engagement. And we need them to play a facilitator, a coordinating role to get things together, but not to lead, because there is a role for the private sector. So where there is need, there is profit. Pursue, and then to put values into action, and to collaborate across these different sectors. So, I'm trying to find what the words value means, and I'm an operational researcher. So, looking at value from the perspective of operational research, and because I'm trying to understand systems thinking, and hopefully over the next couple of weeks, our research team would have written an article on a systems approach to sustainability for the UN Sustainable Development Goals Encyclopedia. A deadline of next month. So this lecture is quite apt. So I've been doing some research or some thinking into these different words. Sarah and Maurice, fantastic responses. Let's see how they match to what's in the literature. So if we look at Murray 29, he recognises the importance of meaning in work, and a shared sense of purpose. So businesses have a social purpose. They are relational. Now, okay, we're in an odd situation at the moment. We're home working, but we're having virtual conversations. We are, and the teams that I'm involved in at work, we're still meeting online because it's social, and the importance of a cup of tea and a cup of coffee with a colleague, with a team. But we can do that online, and of course, we need to be there physically to build relationships. Not always, and not every interaction, but workplaces are social areas, and we go to work because we have meaning. So I got out of bed this morning, and I was excited to be with you guys and to talk to you about systems thinking and sustainability. And I'm delighted people are online and listening, so and contributing like you guys are. So there has to be meaning. You'd switch off this lecture if there was no meaning, that I was just waffling. Maybe you think I am, but if there had no. So I like that word meaning, and you heard me start at the start of the class around the word meaningful engagement. Maybe more might know a little bit about this and may be able to contribute, but I don't know if you've come across, or maybe all of you, in your global marketing service domain logic by Vargo and Lush. And they talk about value perceived and determined by the customer on the basis of value in use. So, Maurice, give us a comment. Is that in line with your definition of value? So we talked about economic value. Would everyone like to meet my wife? If you're going to do it, you can do it properly, Rosie. You're on a recorded lecture.
Hello.
This is Rosie. Rosie, my wife, is taken in the office at the back, and if she's on a video conference, I can't go near her. I can't breathe. Can't go anywhere near her. However, she can successfully walk past my screen and bring me back my dog. So there's difference in values. It's just me making a point. Hi, Rosie. Yeah, with a Z. Yes, Rosie is the delivery service. My students saying hello to you.
Hello.
Okay. Use the other door. Maurice is Rosie with a Z. Okay. Oh, Lena. Lena is on the call now. We've got more students. Hi, Lena. Well done. Everyone said hello to you, Rosie. Thanks for your intervention. Oh, Sarah says hello. Let's just have a Rosie moment. If any of my students are in the Morningside area, Benji the dog is available for free dog walks. And by the look of it, we've got plenty of food. Come over for a party. Oh no, no, can't. That's against government guidelines. See, thank you. You've put me on a different path. So value. So think about this, Maurice, in terms of your comments. And the normal way of doing business is to make money, profit. And this word value, from a marketing perspective, perceived and determined by the customer on the basis of value in use. Value in use. Is that in line with your definition? The general view of the world that Maurice presented earlier on. Values, articulated as the desired culture, serves as our moral compass. These are our behaviours and attitudes. Our behaviours and attitudes, they guide or they instill our behaviour and attitudes. So I think we can all agree on the values definition, but the word value can go in different directions. Purpose, we're talking a lot about the word purpose. Why is it worth doing what we are doing? For multiple stakeholders. So one of the key things that we have done, and we've been talking about in our classes, is the word purpose. And of course, this provides motivation and inspiration. Hi, Lena. Thank you ever so much for joining. Really pleased you have. And going into the systems thinking operational research, interests and values, interests and values that guide us, that bind us within organizations, within teams, individually, and our ethical stance on how we put these values into action. As we put these values into action. Just a little pause for one moment. Okay, so we're talking about values and how we put these into purpose. So Maurice. Okay, so this is good then, Maurice. This is interesting. The definition of value could be perceived in line with my definition. Values in use is a subjectively allocated value. Okay, what do you mean by allocated value? How is value allocated? How is value allocated? So we go back to perceived from a customer point of view. The person who's getting value from this chocolate bar as it's being eaten, this cup of tea as it's being drank, and of course they're doing that in order to, they're going to exchange money for that. So is there a little bit of conflict there, Maurice? Is there a little bit of conflict there? Is there a little bit of conflict there between those definitions and our general understanding of that? Think about that. Is there a little conflict in terms of how we perceive the word value and values? Think about that. I find that fascinating. Underpins quite a lot of our discussions around purpose and meaning. Underpins quite a lot of our discussions on the news at the moment, how we put values into purposeful action. So someone's come online and is speaking. Someone new come online?
Oh yeah, I did. Hi.
Hi. This is Lena.
No, this is Masha.
Masha, how are you? Okay.
I'm all right. Yeah.
Thank you for joining. So this is being recorded, by the way, and it's being live streamed. So, like Davina McCall would say, be careful what you say. Everything okay with you?
Yeah. It's all good.
Back in Germany.
No, I'm leaving like on next Monday if everything works out.
Are there still flights?
Yeah, I hope. Yeah, they are, but I hope they are gonna be flying next Monday.
And what city are you from?
Sorry.
What city are you flying back to?
Oh, to Bremen, northern Germany. Well, I'm flying to Hamburg actually, but I'm living in Bremen, so.
Okay, and then with your family.
Yes, exactly.
Excellent. So good luck to you. So
Thank you.
So we've started this, and we're talking about the word purpose, meaning, and values. We've been going over the concept.
Okay.
Can I mute everybody? Can you go on to mute?
Yes.
If you wish to speak,
Yeah.
then unmute and chip in. And there's also a chat discussion, and Maurice and Sarah and Lena and Siva have been contributing in the chat too. So do feel free to do that. Okay. Lovely. So, the importance placed on values, and values being the driving force underpinning our discussions on this module. It's quite an old reference now, but I think it still rings true. There is little understanding between human values and management practices. So this is an area of massive research. Hundreds of PhDs are going to be doing on this, and for many people, they would think, well, this is small beer. But this goes to the heart of our debate and our conversation. So let's go back to the word meaningfulness. It's important for individuals, it's important for organizations. But this, in surveys, employee surveys, when you ask people why do they go to work, what's the purpose of going to work? Of course, pay and rewards, but it's this sense of meaning. What do you get? What meaning do you get from your work? So I work in education, and I see you get good careers, and I hope that you take some lessons, or some, not lessons, some learning and some development of your skills, that there is meaning. So I like to think about these words, meaning, values, and purpose, and they are personal, they are social, and they are relational. They are about how we build relationships between each other, whether it's in a team, whether it's in a department, whether it's in an organization, with our stakeholders, with our customers. Meaning, values, and purpose. I want you to really think about that. If there's no exam for this module, but if I was to ask you a very difficult question, I think it will be about around purpose, meaning, and values, and what does this mean in business, and how you take a perspective on that. So hopefully you've been reading the FD.com, the articles around capitalism, and it's being reset, most certainly being reset over the coming weeks. Globalization is under siege, and the way that we see the world at the moment is under siege. Hopefully, maybe some good will come out of our period of isolation. But remember, it's about what gives us meaning, values, and purpose, and these are relational. So, a nice comment here. So we'll go back to the comments. I'm really enjoying this. Thank you, Lena. I think we've addressed Maurice's comment, so I'll look at Lena's comment. She really Maurice's note that values always shape how we see value. Yes, our values, how we put these into purposeful action. Yes, so how our values are put into create value. I think I need to spend a couple of years thinking about that particular point. how we use our values, demonstrate our values to create value. And what we've published over the last couple of years is some articles or some conference presentations actually on the North Star. So we did a presentation at University in Kent. We talked about the North Star, going to the heart of purpose. And I think it's exactly what Maurice said, and it's what you just said, Lena. It's about how our values shape how we see value, and also how our values help us to create value, which is purposeful. And this is down to our interests and our values. And how do we measure value? That's another question, a whole other debate. How do we measure value? But one thing I think we can take away from that, Lena, is how do we measure value at the moment? How is value measured in particular business at the moment? Happiness of employees, social impact is done. So we've seen lots of examples of social bite, and one of their measures is obviously eradicating homelessness. They're a social purpose business. To do that, they have to make money. It's a good example of creating shared value. So the most common way is being financial economics. It's a traditional way of doing business, but is indeed defined by the purpose of the business. If the business is, I'm looking at the chat, but because a minute you can put it in the chat, or you can ask it on here. It is indeed defined by the purpose of the business. If the business is primarily focused on creating lots of financial profit, a monetary definition of value might be the best option. There are other business models. There will always be a monetary economic objective, won't there? Question. But there are other business models like social business. So for a social business to be in business, they have to make money, don't they? Distribute that money, to redistribute that money. Where the creation of value goes beyond that and might be measured as environmental impact, social impact. So some articles that have been posted in the last couple of weeks and we've discussed is if you put purpose beyond profit, these organisations have been found to make more money. So an example of that is our B Corp movement. A recent article showed that 25 to 30% increase in profits since being certified as a B Corp. So I'll dig that reference out again and make sure I got that correct. But there is showing a trend that if you put purpose beyond profit, you make more profit. Problem here is that we are still missing a good way to measure this. Yes. Okay. So, Lena, that's a very, very, very fascinating question about measurement. Now, I think we've addressed that. Now, I know you was in Germany on your exchange a couple of weeks ago, but we did the B Impact Assessment tool. So I want you to do the B Impact Assessment tool for a particular organisation for your assignment. And I want you to think, is this a good way of measuring impact? So here, what we're talking about is the word value, how we measure value. One of those would be economic profit. But also there's impact, and there's an emerging agenda around impact measurement. So the B Impact Measurement tool is one way of measuring impact across governance, workers, the environment, and other categories too. Okay. So I'm glad this is getting a really good. This is demonstrating that online can work. Maurice is going to ask questions. So Lena's last remark led me to this question. All right. What kinds of measurements of values are there? Okay. Yes, I think I've just answered that question. And haven't I? So there's value, economic value. Take the balance scorecard, which we talked about in a previous module, and we look at value creation from marketing, innovation, finance, and what's the other one? Marketing, operations, my subject, business process measurement. Okay? And we to measure our critical success factors in a balanced overview of using the balance scorecard and other theories. But the driving one generally has been profit. But we must also appreciate that balanced scorecard, Kaplan and Norton argued that we must take a helicopter view and see that affecting marketing would affect operations, and this would affect our bottom line. One of our basic theories in sustainability is the triple bottom line. We must measure impact on the environment, social, as well as economic, and this is true sustainability. And we'll come back to that a little bit later. That's how value is generally measured. But now we're talking about impact measurement, and this goes to the lectures we did the last couple of weeks, the B impact assessment tool, and your assignment measuring a range of impacts. And the way that they do it is they ask a series of questions, such as, do you pay the minimum wage, living wage in your organisation? It's a bit more sophisticated than that. And then you get a ranking. So please use the impact assessment tool on the organisation you've chosen to study for your assignment, and then that should show a range of impact measurements. But I think that's the answer that I want to give you, Maurice and Nina. But I don't think it completely answers the question, because I want you to go and use that impact assessment tool and to question that yourself. Is that holistic? Is it a holistic approach to measurement? The EFQM model, and you did come to, I know many of you came to the launch of the new EFQM model, puts at the heart creating value. So I've come into the comments, you are absolutely right. So that's probably Lena. Okay. Do we objectively measure value apart from just money? Okay, so try to distinguish the word value and impact. And then Lena, of course, economic value will always be an essential measure for all forms of business, but I feel like there is a lack of good ways to measure the impact of more purpose-driven organisations, especially in terms of comparability. I wonder if you mean transparency there. Yeah, and Maurice agrees with you. What do I need to send? A paper, okay. The impact assessment. So, value in the traditional sense, we've talked about embedded and bolt-on sustainability, and how we capture value. 7 levels of sustainability. Remember, it started with risk, moved on to the last one being industry standards and innovation. The Laszlo, 7 ways of capturing value and managing our value chains. And we see from Michael Porter's talking about productivity, creating value productivity throughout the value chain, looking at the product and service life cycle of the product to create value. And what I want to focus on today is relationships, how we build transformative relationships. Transformative relationships, so that we can co-develop solutions. For the term co-creation, so I'm just using Laszlo's and Zegan Behavior. How do we co-develop, co-create solutions across a range of stakeholders, which includes our not-for-profits, our regulators, public, private, voluntary sector, to build systems level change. So I'm really, really fascinated by the word relationship, how we transform these relationships, build a meaningful engagement in these relationships. Also, we talked about how we build new competencies, and underpinning these competencies development will be the natural environment. Of course, I gave you the example of the whiskey industry. And if the whiskey industry was to go down, if climate change was to pursue the way it does, will we have a whiskey industry? We talked in a lot about that. A point that's already been made, how do we come together to cooperate with competitors in order to gain? And you'll be seeing that over the next couple of weeks, how supermarkets will come together, different organisations will come together, collaborate, create new ways of working in order to deal with the crisis that we're in at the moment. And of course, in terms of embedding values, sustainability has to be part of everybody's job. And a point I believe Lena mentioned earlier on, I think it was Lena, around visibility how do we measure this and make it transparent? Remember, we went through the B impact assessments of a number of companies, and I put them on Moodle, the companies that have got very high or are B Corps, and some of those are transparent in terms of their reporting. And I think maybe some of my dissertation students are analysing those reports as part of their dissertation. And they're a really useful source, particularly when we're struggling to collect data at the moment. Okay, so the only thing I wanted to talk really about on this slide was the value and how value is seen and has been seen in our discussions to date, and how value is captured. But you can see in each of these other areas how value can be captured through relationships, competing, building our competency, embedding culture around values, and being more transparent. So we have here. You're welcome to come on and talk if you wish to. The balanced scorecard. Yeah, I just mentioned the balanced scorecard. Yeah, balanced scorecard. What do you know about sustainability balanced scorecard? Is that a common thing yet? There is research on that puts sustainability at the heart of balanced scorecard, because you have to innovate. It's about marketing. It's about processes. Sustainability is at the heart. But certainly about values. What I think you might have missed the start, Masha, about how we see the word values. But the balanced scorecard has been superseded now by a range of other performance measurement systems, and what I pose to you is the B impact assessment tool as being the best out there at the moment. And we've been using the B impact assessment tool to evaluate businesses across a range of hundreds of questions. So, Masha, you might want to have a look at that impact assessment tool and the B Scotland Can Be movement. Sarah, I think this lack of an established measurement when it comes to the impact of more purpose-driven organisations seem to weaken their credibility. Yeah, of course, that's a very good point. So this just proves that I think these conversations are really interesting. So and online's working with the chat. Yes, how we measure our businesses. So I think I'd pose the question: use the impact assessment tool. How did you get on with that? Does that help to evaluate the holistic nature of that business? I can make my own tea in an online lecture, or get someone to make it for me. So, to systems thinking, I want you to do some reading on this. We are independent learners, so we've got plenty of time on our hands to study. And I agree with this statement, and this was in The Guardian about 5 years ago, that systems thinking may represent the next phase of evolution of sustainability. We have to think in terms of systems thinking. And this goes back to the 70s and 80s. People talking about we must holistically think, and there's a whole series of tools and techniques for systems thinking. So we're going to go into this. So it allows us to see the whole, to embed sustainability. So we've moved on in our debates and our lectures around corporate social responsibility, CSR. We've moved on from that, and we've moved towards sustainability. And on the journey, we have talked about theories such as creating shared value. One could argue that that is a bolt-on strategy, if you remember what we were talking about, bolt-on versus embed. Here, we are looking to embed sustainability across teams, departments, organisations, and to take it even one step further, our stakeholders, our key stakeholders, and we will see this as part of a circular economy. And I think some of you will be getting quite excited about the circular economy, and this has come up as in the last 5 years or so, and something that I haven't actually taught in the past or been introduced to our final year module. However, Edinburgh is seeking to be one of Europe's leading cities in terms of driving a circular city, a circular economy city, and they wish to start with the festivals. to make our festivals circular. They're not going to start with the main festival because that's big. They were to start with the science festival, which has been cancelled, of course. How can we bring about a circular festival? So we'll talk about that next week or the week after. Don't push it in terms of too much time. So what we certainly need is to think differently. And what we've been doing in the last few weeks is seeing new business opportunities. Even today, there are business opportunities. Yesterday, I phoned up a sandwich shop in my local village that is a sweet shop. And this guy is not selling sweets at the moment, or probably still is selling sweets, but he's making bacon sandwiches, Cornish pasties, and he's turned himself into a delivery shop. And I put an order in for my dad, who cannot leave the house for a number of reasons, and he had a delivery. That's a new business opportunity. He's doing the right thing, but also he's he's identified a need, and he's now pursuing that need, and through. And hats off. Thank you very much, Gary, Mr. Toms in Tenbury Wells. Fantastic. So in order to think differently, we need to think and debate and discuss the word values that we've been talking about. We need to think about how we align our values with our stakeholders, but we have to think about this in a bounded way. Who should we include and exclude? Who are our key stakeholders? So businesses and individuals and teams have to make decisions on who they include and exclude as their key stakeholders. And obviously when you exclude a group, you might be marginalizing that group. And is that what you actually want to do? So one of the key questions here is, who should I engage with? Whose views should I integrate if you look at Hart's theory of creating sustainable value? Who am I creating value for? That's one question. But whose views should I integrate in terms of the decisions and the activities I'm making? And if you look at the paper that we wrote, we're talking about unlocking shared spaces, these meaningful engagement between business community, and I'm hoping that we can open some shared spaces where people can collaborate, build these meaningful relationships, and lead to systemic interventions. And this is work in progress, the Edinburgh Can Be project. And maybe you might wish to come back to Edinburgh and do a PhD in this area. Okay, so we've nearly got a full class. We've got other people here. And thank you ever so much for your comments. This is fantastic. So we've done Sarah's comment. Richard's welcome. Richard, you're all our entrepreneurs, but Richard, our budding entrepreneur. Is it fair to say that embedded sustainability is pretty much the TQM approach? And like sustainability, it's a good question. I think the answer to that question, I'm going to reframe it a little bit. We learn from the TQM movement. So we look at movement. So TQM being a movement from the 80s and 90s, still today. And we learned from the lean movement, early 90s and still today, but they were more popular. They were, often there's a question, are these management fads? But here, in total quality management, we was talking about quality. We was talking about creating business excellence, the module that we've done in the past. Last term, creating business excellence. Now, I'm told from Quality Scotland that they don't like using the word excellence anymore. It's around creating outstanding organisations. So think about that. They're not using the word excellence, but it's around outstanding organisations. And lean, the key word there is identifying waste and minimising that waste. Value added, non-value added activities. Here, we're talking about putting purpose in the middle of everything we do, values and values. So this is the, it's not a fad, but this is the decade or so that we talk about and we question values in business. and how we put our values in purposeful action. And most certainly, turn on the news today in the next couple of weeks. Wow, aren't we putting our values to purpose? We are seeing this, and we are questioning globalization. And capitalism is most certainly under siege. But that's another conversation. So I think we learn from TQM, we learn from Lean, and now the sustainability, the green movement was about putting greening the environment at the front and foremost. I think now we're moving into the decade of purpose. And underpinning purpose is interests and values, taking the old rich definition. Now, as students, it's 2020. And if you came back in 5 years' time, probably have an answer to that question. Similar to, look at the total quality management movement, look at the lean movement, look at the sustainability movement. This is what's in the toolbox. At the moment, this is an emerging movement, quite mature now, actually, but not necessarily in terms of practice. And I think the key set of tools that we've got at the moment is the B Impact Assessment tool, the B Corp movement, the social purpose business, example of Social Bike, Graham Bank, people like that. But what we definitely can say is the trend is towards creating sustainable value. If we were to take the view of Hart, Laszlo and others, creating sustainable, and the FQM model is building that in and recognising that the movement toward creating sustainable value, mitigating against these risks that might be there. So I think it's a really good point, Richard. So Lena, very true, Sarah. And I think that brings us right back to Maurice's remark. I love this. This is fantastic. We'll just move online. That values shape how we see value. Yes, that's exactly the message I wanted to get over today, or to question, because I think this is consuming me at the moment through my research. So values that allow society to see non-financial values. Ooh, go and get some toilet roll. Have been gaining ground in recent years. Completely changed. A couple of weeks. We're not going to see the world like we did. I've changed gaining ground in the recent years because of a general change of view to a more conscious. Yeah. So the word conscious, if we go into the word consciousness, it's around a higher purpose. What does a higher purpose mean? It's around interests and values. Now, the problem here is when we talk about purpose-driven, values-driven businesses, who says one's perspective on values is more important than the others? Who says that that is the higher purpose of a business? So I would imagine lots of restaurant owners and pubs at the moment. How do I keep staff on? How do I pay them? So the value they wish to create is to keep their employees in employment at the moment. Not selling beer. Well, of course, you've got to sell takeouts or something to keep people on working. But yeah, I think that's difficult, isn't it? But what is this higher purpose? Who says that higher purpose is the right purpose? There's an emerging trend now to creating sustainable value and to question what our values are in business. And consumers are questioning the customers that they go. Because I watched that Dispatches program a couple of weeks ago, I have made a decision to buy certain products and to avoid certain products, because I feel that if I look at that cup of tea or cup of coffee and there are, say, 60 granules in that cup of coffee, am I sure that they haven't been picked by a 14-year-old or 11-year-old or underage person? So it's questioned my values and how I behave in terms of what I buy. And of course, you've got to make your own decisions. That has had an impact on me. So I think about what has an impact on you. So Sarah agrees with Lena. like some agreement. Consequently, this general change of view within society and therefore also the stakeholders could lead to adding more credibility to measurements of companies. The importance of the impact assessment tool. Yes, I think you have. That's why it's important, then, isn't it? That's why it's important. So I would predict that the B Corp movement is going to grow exponentially, and most certainly people are going to take value out of the B impact assessment tool. A question I haven't got an answer for is, and I want you to think about this when you do the B impact assessment tool. Does this give us an holistic perspective, understanding of the impact across the business and our stakeholders? I'd like to think the answer is yes. I'd like to think that it's a journey, so the B impact assessment tool is being improved over time. And we've seen that one of the major improvements this year is that the UN Sustainable Development Goals are now incorporated into the B impact assessment tool. And we know that the whole world is talking about the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And we know that in Glasgow in December, the world will come, maybe online now, to discuss climate action. Lena, financial purpose, the purpose of keeping people employed is still a fair enough purpose. So the traditional view of business, okay. So let's think about what Lena's just wrote, and the traditional way of business and how we see value. I'm not going to be prescriptive here. I'm going to ask questions to get you thinking. That purpose of a business in terms of economic value, is it going to change over time? Is it changing in a couple of weeks where we have this massive uncertainty? Is that changing, or is that actually the normal way of doing business? But we can, through our purpose, make more profit by looking at how we can address social issues with a business model, gaining more customers because we have a practice that keeps them loyal. Are we able to retain our employees because we treat them well? And this is all part of our sustainability debate. And one of the main reasons why companies wish to pursue sustainability is to keep talent, keep people employed, keep people working in a particular organisation. Because when they leave, there's a cost associated with that, not just in recruiting a new person, but the knowledge that is lost. A bit of So every company should. So Lena says every company should think about their environmental footprint, how they treat employees, and how they do best to be lean. And it does make sense. So an holistic view would go a little bit beyond that. So maybe have a look at the B impact assessment tool and see if it does that. Okay, we're doing very well, but I'm going to close and have a conversation. I don't want to tire you out. So we have to see the whole. And I'm always reminded of The Blind Man and the Elephant, a poem from 1910s. As you feel the trunk, as you feel the ears, as you feel the tail. Feel the tail, is it a rope? I feel a rope. As I feel the trunk, it's a snake. But we have to stand back and take the perspective. It's an elephant. It's an elephant. And if we want to create value in business, we have to take a stakeholder perspective, because value is with our stakeholders too, our customers and how they use a product, and most certainly our suppliers create value. As we see with protective equipment at the moment, we want our NHS to get them as quick as possible and at the right price. So hopefully that supply chain then delivers. And Michael Porter, let's go back to Michael Porter, said if we can think differently in business, we can change the world. Academics are not meant to say we can change the world through our research. And I would critique Michael Porter and say we need to see each other differently. We need to build cooperation and collaboration. We need to really understand values, putting these values into purpose, into purposeful action to create value. And when we start seeing new ways of creating value through cooperation as well as competition, then we'll be in a better place. If we think differently. So I think my guiding question through my research, how do we go about creating a meaningful engagement between business communities? Is trying to find new ways of thinking differently. But Michael Porter might disagree with my interpretation of what he was saying, but he was talking about we need to see business differently. We need to see each other differently. Look at values and align values. Work with partners that have values in alignment with us. Yes, Lena, it makes perfect. So, I think this diagram is going to go in the paper that I'm writing at the moment. So it's fresh. It was put into the conference paper last year. So, and I've tried to differentiate here reductionist thinking, holistic thinking. So reductionist thinking, this is what I need to do. Some of the selfishness comes into this. Reductionist thinking is, I must go to the supermarket today to buy my toilet roll. And I must get them before anybody else. And I must buy 2 toilet rolls and store them. And other people won't have a toilet roll. I've got loads. This is a reductionist mindset, looking after oneself. But the holistic view is we need a toilet roll to go around the whole street, the whole city, the whole of the UK, Germany, and Bangladesh and India, so that we can all be safe. So what we're doing over the last week or so is we are taking more of a holistic view on how we can look after each other. And our values most certainly are changing over the last couple of weeks. But when we saw that panic buying, it was reductionist thinking. And of course, how we see profit, the purpose of business, this higher purpose, moving towards this higher purpose. So I put 2 trajectories here: reductionist thinking, holistic thinking, the pursuit of profit, and going beyond profit, purpose beyond profit. So I need to do a little bit more work on this. So this is how we've been talking in the module. We talked about citizenship, and we're seeing a lot of that at the moment. Philanthropy, people like Bill Gates, redistributing their money for philanthropic aims. Sustainability, whatever that means. And if you take Michael Porter's definition of corporate social responsibility, he puts those 3 things in that bucket. Sustainability being a very wide term. And we define sustainability as meeting unmet needs. And then we can look at creating shared value and how you can engage with your stakeholders to create that value through shared value creation. And I think I would like to argue or put forward the argument this is still a bolt-on strategy. It's business case by business case. I get this in the university. I put on a course, get on board program to get students onto trustee boards, charitable boards, and I've been pursuing this the last couple of years in terms of executive education. And I had to put forward a business case, and I'd like to think I would have won the argument based on reputation. It's good for research. It's the right thing a university should do. But the question is, will that make money? Will it make significant profit for that to run? There's a business case to it. So that project was creating a shared value project where, in terms of my values, I just want to reduce the average age of a trustee from 57 down to 50, down to 40, down to 30. It's gone up to 66, but that's another debate. Because I'm taking I'm a holistic thinker. Are you a reductionist thinker? And then we published our paper on how we can co-create through that meaningful engagement. And now in the last 10 minutes or so of our class, talk about whole system transformation, which actually is happening as we know it. New models for sustainability. It's a whole systems transformation. So Greta and a school strike for climate and our systems thinking, systems change, not climate change, is all calling for systemic transformations, systems change. And do you know what's happened? We've got a virus that's going around the world, and this is bringing across whole systems change in a whole new meaning. So observe, watch the news. It is absolutely fascinating. It's going to the core of our values, our discussion, our thoughts on values, how we put those in action, and how businesses react and respond, and the purpose of business. It is all being questioned in terms of Michael Porter talking about capitalism being under siege, and 40 to 60% of our products over the years are now coming from a particular country. Our thoughts on globalization and our purchasing patterns, it's all out in the open at the moment, all for discussion, like putting the washing out on the line. Transformation. It's emerging. There's a little revolution going on at the moment. Let's see how we fare. So, seeing the forest and the tree, holistic. So seeing the forest and the tree. This is part of the holistic paradigm. Now, the World Health Organization, very important in the news at the moment, United Nations and the OECD have highlighted that systems thinking, and I'm not going to go too much more about the tools and techniques, so you can do that in your reading, but they present that systems thinking is a key leadership skills for the future. So I hope I'm embedding some of these skills in terms of the teaching. R for C. This is when we used to be able to meet each other and to gather. Climate action now. School. Well, definitely missing school. For climate action. Systems change, not climate change. Okay, I created some of these slides a couple of months ago. A couple of weeks ago, I suppose. Yeah, we're seeing that. I would have thought the comments would be going nuts now in terms of relating the current news and this debate. I'm trying to finish in the the paper that I wrote last year, the papers around systemic sustainability, and I'm taking what Laszlo said, that the origins, the first person who coined this, and I'm trying to adapt this definition, and this will be adapted and written in this paper that I'm writing at the moment. How do we develop capacity? How do we develop capacity so that all human systems, people, the relationships, the values that bind us, can coexist in harmony with a living system? So, first of all, sustainability of oneself. Now, we question in our first lecture, how many planets do we need to sustain our way of life? And I don't think any of us was able to sustain our way of life in one planet. This week, maybe, but we weren't able to. And if we took a North American view, we need 3 or 4 planets to stay our way of life. So we can't carry on the way that we're doing. But sustainability has to start with oneself, our own personal beliefs. So this year, my New Year's resolution, and I'm doing all right, is to go plastic free. It's a small action, but I'm going plastic free. Now, I'm still throwing away a lot of cardboard and plastic, recycling, of course, and I'm amazed how much packaging that I'm accumulating. And I'm doing my best to go plastic free. I'm struggling. I'm really struggling. So I've changed my buying patterns. I've changed the way I think about what I buy. And I'm still struggling, but I'm conscious. So here is an example. It's on my table. My milk is now being delivered, and my fruit juice and vegetables are now being delivered from someone who's got a battery vehicle and is taking vegetables and eggs and milk from the local farm. And it's glass, it's not plastic. So I've changed how I buy. That's a personal example. I wonder if you can think about what you have done in your lives to be more sustainable and to embed these values in oneself. And of course, sustainability has to be relational, how we bind ourselves amongst others. Sustainability has to be about how we relate to others. And this is the question of today, isn't it, in the news? How we bind the relationships between each other. How do we see nature? Our ecosystems around us. How do we see and involve ourselves in nature? So, one of the things I said earlier, I play golf, and at golf courses, the natural environment. That's what makes it so wonderful. I get to be with nature as well as be very bad at golf. But sustainability has to be around nature. And sometimes we overlook or have forgotten that all our raw materials have to come from somewhere. It's from nature. Coffee that I'm drinking uses natural resources such as coffee beans, but also uses considerable amounts of water to wash those coffee beans. And in Guatemala, Peru, South America, and other countries around the world, India and Bangladesh, these coffee beans are being washed with clean water. And maybe some of these areas in these countries do not have access to clean water, but my coffee beans might. We have to think about sustainability with nature. And fourth, the flow of being and becoming. This is where I think it gets into the mindfulness, the yoga-y type language and things, which is highly relevant, but I think it puts people off. Sustainability, the flow of being, evolutionary, flow of being and becoming, integral. We are born and we die. A tree is planted with a seed, blossoms, and it has a life cycle. It will die eventually. But this flow of being and becoming is evolutionary. We have a time on this planet, and then the next generation have their time. So think about some of the language. Maurice, how do we remain sustainable and go sustainable in times of this pandemic? Oh. Do you want to have a go at giving some answers to that? I think self-isolating and buying less and not stockpiling and would be good for the environment. If you saw on the news last week, Venice, the canals in Venice, you can see the fish. If you saw the news about China, people have gone out for the first time after a couple of months, and the skies have been clear because there's no pollution on the ground. So we're seeing it, we're living it, we're seeing difference. So those Chinese people think, wow, look at the environment, how it could be different if we didn't do some of this human man-made stuff. But my answer to your question, Maurice, is the question of values and how we create value. I think that's at the heart, and I think that is being questioned at the moment, isn't it? You're welcome to question for discussion. So if you wish to come online and speak to Maurice's question, please do. So Richard said staying at home at the moment is an example of trying to save lives and an awful lot of CO2 pollution for the time being. For the time being, all change leads to change. And Sarah agrees with Richard. I think looking at the bigger picture, the holistic systems thinking picture, the current change in behaviour. Okay, so we've been talking about values, and underpinning values is behaviour and attitudes. And how our behaviours, attitudes being changed at the moment, and our everyday life, and to a more sustainable lifestyle. Thank you ever so much for these comments. I think it gives me feedback that what we're talking about and discussing online is actually making sense. And at the heart of this, often I find through my teaching and the feedback that I get that people say that I often confuse, but I tackle big questions like capitalism and values and what is the purpose. And there is no answer. There are trends. There are things that we can observe through our research and practice. But we're observing. There is no answer. We can just look at these theories as lenses, such as how do we create higher purpose, but the question there is it the right purpose? The local pub at the end of the street has a higher purpose. Sell beer. Oh, that's not the higher purpose. Create meaningful relationships between a community of people going to the pub. And that the natural way of doing business, to stay in business system, is to sell beer. But is that a higher purpose? Well, yes, because it's about building relationships, but some people don't agree with pubs. I've digressed. So let's move on. Some more. Thank you. Calling me Dr. Weaver online. Well done, Maurice. You normally call me Miles to my face. Right. Sarah, on that one. Masha, Richard, where are we? Richard, I think that one. It's because people are commenting, so it's making my screen go up and down. Sarah, Masha, I think Sarah, I agree with Richard. I think looking at the bigger picture, the current changes within behaviour patterns and that everyday life add to more sustainable life. This is silent, sit on your sofa revolution. And then we had Masha. I think people might overthink their buying habits because we actually have the feeling of products being scarce, and having to stay home makes you think about what you really need to buy now. Yeah, and Amazon is doing a wonderful delivery at the moment. If it's not a non-essential item, you're enabling someone to come into your stairwell or to your door and give you a package that might be containing a virus, and we know that it stays on cardboard for a few hours. So I've got a self-quarantine area in my corridor for the postman lady. So some of these things are essential, part of our way of life, but they are a risk as well at the moment in this current climate. So we have to think about that. So our buying behaviour. The thing I often think about around that is we often criticise people. People often criticise lack of jobs in an area, and then they'll go and buy product that is shipped from a country 4,000 miles away, which could have been manufactured in the local area, employing a local job. I don't want to get into opinion, but I answer your question. Let's see what you've come up with. A lot of people buy. Okay. I was just giving a response. I was just wondering. I love Maurice's interventions. I was just wondering how can I contribute with my own behaviour. Okay, just think about it. Do a little brainstorm then, and think about what you can do. Go into a mindfulness. Go on YouTube and download a mindfulness talk, and then think about it. That'll free your mind actually afterwards. Okay. Zero waste. People concentrate on other things right now. Is zero waste sustainability mobility. Yeah, the zero waste, the circular economy stuff is growing, and our knowledge of that is going to be quite substantial in the future. Sustainable lifestyle. I think people might overthink their buying habits because we actually have the feeling of products being scarce. Okay, good. Yeah, and having to stay home makes you think about what you really need to buy right now. Giving me, I was just wondering how I can. Yeah, okay, it's going up and down. Masha, please tell me if I've missed one of your points. Masha, unfortunately, a lot of people buy in bulk a lot of stuff they do not need 100 gins just for the sake of stocking. Well, I think It's a few people. Okay, the majority doesn't behave like that. Lena says, my mom keeps noticing that products like yeast to make your own bread are sold out as well. I've got a friend who bakes cakes as part of a business. Can't do a business in the moment because everyone's got flour in their cupboard. Perhaps there's actually a trend of people are actually making things themselves again. Going back to the selfish. Oh, okay. One part of that is the selfishness. If they use that flour, but again, maybe a self-discovery there that they might start baking bread, cooking more freshly. Yeah, and this is consumer consciousness. This is part of this silent revolution, I think, that is happening at the moment. Situation, you go back to cans of food from the freezer, I can see that problem. I think it's amazing at the moment that years ago our grandparents some of our grandparents went to war, or some people you may have known over the last few decades have experienced war, going to trenches, and now sit on our sofas, stay at home. Think about what we do. Okay, so I said we're going to try and bring this to a close now. So this is what I'm developing from this module. And what I did is I took the different perspectives. This is what I'm writing at the moment in this paper about different perspectives of systems. And I took the Skills Development Scotland descriptions of what skills are required from our students to start to think about it. Now, everyone in the class is on the entrepreneurship route. So how you build innovation, creativity, come up with ideas, take them to fruition, make them happen. And social intelligence is a key skill. So if I go through some of the key ideas, take critical thinking now. I think students want to hit me sometimes. I keep saying, critically discuss, critically analyse, critically evaluate. We need you to critically think, to deconstruct arguments and to make judgments and to put them forward with justification. Thinking. So in terms of that, and our discussions, to appreciate how value is created, how it may be destroyed through the risks that a business might take, and how we create value as individuals, in teams, in departments, organised as a whole, and with our communities. And for the first time I spout communities with an extra I. Sorry about that. If we were to then move collaboration through relationship building, and one thing I've observed over the last week is I've built some really interesting relationships over the last week from virtual coffee hours and attending different meetings online, the university's response to exams and things like that. And I've been talking to people, listening to people from across the whole institution I've never met before. So building new relationships. So there is face-to-face, which is obviously extremely important, but there is this online world, talking to people in different countries and sharing values and experiences and things like that. I find quite fascinating. But collaboration building, so there's a skill here is to identify, initiate, and sustain meaningful engagement in our relationships with our stakeholders, to work and create synergies. Collective goals. See in perspective, we talked about Michael Porter and my own views on seeing each, thinking differently in different perspectives, being aware of others' views and value judgments. So I think we've come to a common understanding of what we mean by values and value. But different people hold values in different ways and make judgments in different ways. So I've got a big bay window here. I'm starting to see people walk up and down the street, probably going to the shop or going for their exercise. And we are asked to stay at home. These are value judgments. To leave the house at the moment, there's a value judgment. Is this essential? Do I need to do this? And how this influences one's an organisational notion of the world when challenged. And sense making. Now, we did a lot of this because we did the conferences, the workshops. Empathy. How do we see empathy with poverty, with homelessness and things like that. This requires holistic thinking, good analysis and synthesis skills to create responses that lead to feasible and desirable change at different levels, at the individual, organisation, local. To address global challenges and issues. Right, so these are the skills I want you to think about. I've really only got a couple more slides now, guys. So we're talking about corona crisis. People have more time again to think about baking, cooking, gardening. Oh, I've been doing some gardening, sustainable ways of living, some painting as well. Apparently, it's only a very small part of the population that actually buying as much cans and frozen foods as they can, although they buy lots unless it's always sold out. Yeah. Richard, it would be interesting to get some insight into the reasoning for people doing gardening and baking stuff. I wonder if it's due, well, this is the dig for victory stuff, isn't it? Due to the fact that people generally have a lot of spare time at the moment. Oh, I don't know if I think my wife's definitely more busier because she's got to react to the situation and put provision in place. And I'm not. I'm just trying to keep to my timetable and schedule a 3-hour class with students, keep to my office hour, and do the rest of my work. So most of my work is doing research. So do that, but yeah, I suppose there's a lot of people who have nothing to do at the moment. Go out and help an old lady get their shopping, I suppose. Richard, lots of spare time at the moment, so they can use it for gardening, baking. And yeah, everyone's going to have good gardens this year. Products, they could be healthier, more sustainable, get out, normal life. That's a nice way of putting it. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, Nina? Yeah, you thought about that too. It's really because people just have more time to do these things now. Yeah, read. It's a good time to study, actually, because you've got the time now to get on and get really stuck into your assignments. Right. Get some insight into read. Yeah, okay. Nina, good. Sarah, that's what I was wondering as well, Richard. Okay, so there's a common theme here. It'll be interesting to see if these trends will remain unsustainable even after the crisis or after the pandemic. We'll bring it back. Yeah. Greta's been doing some great work recently, but this one's going to top that. Implicate being sustainable as consumers question availability of time. It's still part of the topic. It's interesting to relate what we're talking about to the real world. And Masha, yeah, small bakeries might die from it. Still need bread and milk, but can they sustain themselves over this period? And the government's giving out help at the moment, but there are some holes, like self-employed. We'll have to see. Where's the money coming from? Okay, I'm not allowed to give critical views or my own views, so I'm trying to keep away from those. So being conscious, we need to be conscious at the moment. Yeah. We need. Delina's comment. Questions of values. How you're engaging in a conversation online through text and some. Oh, I'm loving it. I'm really loving it. I don't know if this. Let me give me some feedback in terms of whether this is working. Maybe it wouldn't work if we weren't so stuck in our homes. But there is a place. Remember, we have online students around the world, and I wish that we have conversations like we're doing now. It's really good. So Sarah gets to the heart of Lena's comment in terms of questioning value and values, in which way we will be able to incorporate them within our everyday life, working schedule, and everything. Dog signs look at me. So one of my values is taking him out for his daily walk. Good boy. He's been very good, actually. You've been very good, Benji. Very true, Sarah. From Lena, we will be interested to see how this trend develops once the crisis. Our friend has decided to do his presentation on the impact and implications of the COVID-19 outbreak on the sustainability debate. So he's going to be looking at a question, but we agreed it. So our sustainability, as said by Dan, so a local response. And we're emerging in this Edinburgh Can Be movement to mobilise hundreds of thousands of citizens around the sustainable development goals. Private companies, citizens, governors being the key stakeholders of bringing this change around. Our entrepreneurs, where you guys most certainly fit in. In some of the city labs, we're trying to create this infrastructure at the moment, this ecosystem, but I'm sure this is going to be paused, isn't it, for 6 months? And making sure people own the SDGs and the footprint, and bring about massive initiatives of collective impact. So what I think we've done as a business school in the last couple of weeks is we've brought about 200 to 300 students, I'm hoping 300 students, to think about addressing a social issue with a business model. We've had 60 to 70 posters, business ideas, on how they could pursue that in order to eradicate poverty in Edinburgh. Now I'm hoping that 5 to 10 of those ideas will happen. So that will be a collective impact. So that is our first Edinburgh Can Be collective impact. It's not part of Edinburgh Can Be, but it's an interesting example. It follows a similar type model, Social Bite and their We Sleep Out, and bringing about campaigns, change, impact through getting people to sleep out, not out on the streets for a night and think about what it's like to be homeless, and to raise obviously. I'm getting really excited about Edinburgh Can Be in terms of the research we're doing, how we can adapt theories that exist, such as Midgley and his theory of systemic intervention. And I've used some of those ideas in this lecture where I've referenced them. Theory U, is underpinning your assignments, or probably all of the assignments, but most certainly the coaching circle that you're doing. And I think both these theories combined helps me consider, or helps to understand, how we can create these meaningful engagement in these shared spaces to build these cross-sector collaborations leading to co-creation of solutions, systemic intervention and action. So I think this is important, where we can reflect on perspectives. We talked about this, how we bound different problems and the way that we see the problems, and we do that through our analysis, through sense making of what these key issues are. So in Edinburgh, the key issues are around citizens say around affordability, from a citizen survey. In terms of listening to the business community, talked about homelessness being a key, environmental sustainability. So reflect on what are the problem situations around. Try and get as many viewpoints in the business community, the local council, the national government, the private sector, public sector, citizens, university students, entrepreneurs, and sweeping in these viewpoints. So we can and when we question the boundary and who are our key stakeholders, we're ensuring that the issues that are of concern are not marginalising stakeholders, groups, individuals, or the issues themselves marginalised. So the government made a big action yesterday to self-isolate. We must stay in our homes, and that is now being enforced. But what are the unintended consequences? So one thing I'm going to think about today is, are there anybody in my street who cannot get out, haven't got family, and now you're going to find the next couple of extremely difficult? They might be marginalised by those actions. Yeah. So we question this. And how do we build participation? I think this is the tools I'm trying to build for my research. hopefully one or two of you might want to come and do a PhD. And maybe Maurice and Sarah and others, you put it in more layman's terms than I did. But how we use our values, demonstrate our values, put into purposeful, meaningful action. I think I want to build a definition and some thinking around that, and draw on these theories from systems thinking. Theory U is the systems thinking methodology. Edinburgh can be argued. The SDGs incorporated the impact assessment comes from a systems lens, I would argue. And circular economy comes from a systems lens. And this is the end of the paper that I'm writing at the moment for that encyclopedia, looking at different approaches that take a system lens. So I think this has confirmed or made me think about what those systems level transformational tools are. So I'm coming to a close now. We can do the rest of the lecture next week. Yeah, it's a great topic, Lena. That makes so much sense to me now. So values to you are those not negotiable frameworks that even in a stress situation like now, do not lose their, no, it can't lose their relevance. They come to relevance. Sustainability is a foundation for everyday behaviour. Yeah, but sustainability as a foundation. The word sustainability is confusing in that it has so much meaning to people. So when we talk about meaning, it has to go down to values. We put them into action. And our values are interests. Value, how we create values down to our values and interests. That slide that I used before. And they guide our behaviour. While its value to a certain product is not reassessed necessarily, plastic packaging around fresh produce still remains not viable even in these times. Yeah. So this is my banana. It never came in plastic packaging because I bought that from the guy that delivers it once a week. He brings it in a paper bag, drops it off at my door. If I went to Marks Spencer's today, come in packaging, which they would argue is necessary for selling the product, giving information, but also for transporting it. But let's just leave it with a but. It's only going plastic free. Okay, bring this to a close and now let's give some advice to those blind men and the elephants. We follow those elephants to identify who are the stakeholders that we need to integrate their views into our thinking. We need to follow these elephants in terms of downstream, in terms of customers, how we co-create value, in terms of the value in use comment made by Lush, in terms of service domain logic. We need to look at value in terms of the supply chain, how value is in terms of cost and quality and social impact in our. Where are these opportunities? How do we mitigate risks? Might they, well, the example I gave you of Starbucks and Nespresso and their supply chains being exposed, it was their supply chains, but who carries the bag? No one knows that farm, or even can remember the country where that farm was. It was Guatemala in the video. But everyone knows Starbucks, everyone knows Nespresso. So where does the buck stop? So we now have to look at how to create sustainable value, how we implement a range of initiatives throughout the entire organisation, to see the whole, to see the elephant. So the real elephant in the room, it's the tail and the trunk, both upstream and downstream. And the proposition I want to make, I'm going to draw this to a close now. The proposition I wish to make is that supply chains compete, not companies, which was a quote written by Christopher in the early 90s. It's the reason why I did my PhD. Not company versus company, value chain versus value chain. It's supply chains. Supply chain is our view of multiple value chains. cost. So we take a car, around 80% of the cost of a car resides in the supply chain. So if you want to reduce the cost of a car, then you've got to squeeze that value in the supply chain. If you want to improve the quality, it's in the supply chain. If you want to look at the social impact, then the majority of that social impact will be in the supply chain. We have to see the whole. So I think from a Laszlo perspective of embedding sustainability, most certainly an organisational perspective and an identification of the key stakeholders. I could argue it's a systems perspective. But here we're providing the tools and techniques to question, should include next in terms of stakeholders to take that systems perspective. The supply chains compete, not companies. So I'm going to stop it there because we have actually been talking for a few hours and they say online education no more than 20 minutes, but we've been having a really good debate there. And this has been recorded. It's been live streamed as well. No one's going to watch that though. Just testing it. So I'm going to go for your questions then now. You might have contribute. So piece-wise value to a certain product is not right. So if you've got any more comments, and then what I propose that we do next week is we go into some detailed supply chain management. Now I posted on Moodle the dispatches video. Sorry, no, was it Panorama or dispatches? I think it was dispatches. Panorama, BBC Panorama program. Supply chain of Nespresso and Starbucks. Can you all watch that program? So you go into Moodle. If you are in the UK, you can click on that program and it will open up and play. It's a recording that I recorded from the BBC using the software that we have. If you are now outside of the UK, you cannot access the BBC because the university has a university license. I have an individual license. You may have a BBC license in your homes. There is one way around that, and that is to use the virtual desktop. Where, if you go on to Google, I remember being on holiday in Bulgaria when the UK referendum on leaving or staying in the European Union, and I couldn't understand the news, and I was watching the American news because I got the CNN news. But then I looked into the desktop, which gave me a computer in the university or an instance, a window into a computer in the university. It didn't work like that, but you know what I mean. And then I was able to watch the video. So you can watch it through the desktop, which you've all got access to. And if you're in the UK, just click on the link, log in. If you've logged in via Moodle, it will log you in anyway. And that should be fine. Okay. And then what we will do next week is we'll talk about supply chain management, and we'll use that video as a case study for discussion. And I really want you to watch that because all of you guys who have contributed today have been fantastic. Really, really stimulating comments. I think if you watch that video for next week and then we get ready to talk about supply chain management, it will be fascinating. And I'd love to hear your views and debate, discuss those. And then I think it is the holidays then, but maybe another day next week we'll talk about the circular economy. And we'll try and break it down into a group, and we'll have a half an hour. Owen. I think that I need to learn. That's going on. So I'd be very keen to offer that. Next Tuesday we'll talk about supply chain management and that just the Panorama program. And then maybe on the Thursday, if you're agreeable with that, we'll talk about circular economy, or we can make it the next week. But that is actually the Easter holiday. Self-isolating, you might want to. So that's the plan for the next couple of weeks. I'm now going to turn the recording off. So this recording is then saved on Moodle. Disappear. Go for your one walk of the day if you wish. but I'll take any questions. We'll have a 5-minute break. I'll take any questions you may have around the assignments you're doing, any questions you have to me as program leader as well, if you wish, and you might want to take them as one-to-ones offline for another means. Let me know how you're getting on. Talk to one another for a bit. Any questions you wish to raise. Nina, thank you ever so much too, and a good day to all of you. So I either leave now. Thank you ever so much. Lovely long time. Go and get a biscuit. Go and get some apple juice. Go and get a cup of tea. And I'll come back in 5 minutes. Yeah, I thought that worked, Sarah, didn't it? I thought that worked. Thank you, Maurice. That worked. Thank you. I think it did work. Thank you. Let's keep doing it then, and I'll organise a Microsoft Team chat, a virtual coffee hour for the program, for everyone on the program. Okay. Thank you ever so much. I'm going to turn the recording off now. We'll have 5 minutes. I'll play a song, and then come back and see you all next week. If you want to talk about the assignment, have a blether, then please do. Thank you, Siva. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Matt.